Fifth Hour Radio Show.
Let's start this off, man. Phil, what point in your life did you first start getting into music?
Well, I first found out about stuff when I was a little kid, probably 6. I started playing violin when I was 7 years old. Trained under some teachers, was in the junior high orchestra, and guitar hit me around the same time. I mowed 5 lawns and got an acoustic guitar for 50 cents from my up the street neighbor, and I was off and running. So I'd say a few years later, I'm from a little town in New Mexico where they made the atomic bomb. Eugene Bradbury was the president of the Los Alamos Scientific Laboratory. That's where they made the bomb. He was Oppenheimer's assistant, but his wife was my music teacher.
Well, that's a neat tidbit of information there.
Tell me one more time.
I said that was a neat little tidbit of information.
It's not commonly known, but Spirit, ask away.
Do you remember, the first song that you ever learned how to play?
Well, yes, I do. I've been working on the railroad all the live long day. We had a folk, like a songbook, folk songbook, and I was good at playing like 2 notes at the same time. So I would borrow the notes like Bo Diddley did. I didn't know who Bo Diddley was, but there was the sound of that guitar and the smell and all that. It was just something. So I knew how to play. I knew a lot of folk songs. My dad could harmonize like crazy, and he was an unusual guy, still alive. He's 91, and I remind him that he could be playing. She'll be coming around the mountain, and whatever that old Dixie Down. He could play those songs at the same time on a harmonica.
So when did you?
Don't ask me. Yeah.
when did you release this on everybody? When did you play in front of anybody?
Well, there's a story that happened. I was probably 11 years old in 5th grade, and one day I'm at the grocery store. I've been playing for about 4 or 5 years. My cousin had showed me 3 or 4 extra chords. So I knew G, C, D, E, and A, but I didn't know B or any of the minor chords. I sort of knew them, but not really. He told me about 6 or 7 more chords. I was off and running. One day at the grocery store, Mrs. Bradbury, she had a really mousy voice. She goes, "Doc Brown, come over here." And so I did, and everyone in the store saw her. They were like royalty in Los Alamos. Keep in mind, this is like 1961 and 62, the height of the Cold War. John F. Kennedy had come to Los Alamos, and some major people, all the major scientists in the world had been there. And my music teacher's husband was a major thing. He said, "Listen," he looked at my fingertips. He said, "Let me see your fingertips. You have calluses. You better slow down, let your dream catch you. It's going to kill you one day." I had no idea what she was talking about, but I just loved her spirit. She said, "I'm taking you home with me." And she gave me the 1957 arch top acoustic Gibson guitar. So I walked home with it, passed about 40 houses, and you could hear the phone ring. "Isn't that Marty and Bernie's kid, Phil, the oldest? They just moved to the neighborhood. They were at the Bradburys." By the time I got home, my mom had about 30 phone calls. There was smoke coming out of her ears. "What do you mean going to the Bradburys?" "That's visiting the Pope." And the phone rang. "Can I just speak? There's going to be some pretty colorful language I'm about to tell you. Do you want me to edit it?"
No, it's all right.
Okay, so Miss Bradbury calls him, "Marty, it's Adele. The neighbors, they don't know shit about anything. Your son is immeasurably talented. I want him for Glee Club tomorrow. Can you have him at school for 6:45? And my mom said, "Okay." And he said, "By the way, I'm picking you up for lunch tomorrow, too." Next morning, she brought me to my school because there was a big, to do. They were going to have a Glee Club performance. I didn't even know what Glee Club was. I walked in, Rob. There's like 40 of the prettiest girls in the school singing. And I played guitar. They got rid of Mrs. McGillicuddy, this piano player that was really drunk and couldn't play very well. So I accompanied all these girls and a couple of guys. Of course, a couple of guys wanted to join the choir, too. I've been tasting that feeling ever since.
Talking about that stuff.
So we did it.
Go ahead, man.
No, it was a great... That's what started it all. I was playing in front of people when I was about 11.
I mean, your guitar playing is just awesome. That's just the only way to describe it. But your vocals are awesome as well. Your vocals are so unique. How deep into your soul do you go to bring that out, man?
It kind of brings me up. I grew up with a Rat Pack. there was a couple of neat things that happened. Sammy Davis Jr., Frank Sinatra, Tony Bennett. Well, I didn't find out about Chet Baker till later. Dizzy Gillespie and before him, Louis Armstrong. I love that guy. Nat King Cole had his own television show. This was the golden age of television, where you couldn't tape anything. You had to be good. So I was profoundly influenced by that, and I love, what's his name, Wills and the Texas Playboys. There were some incredible country guys that played too. I just love the swing. I remember Elvis came out in 61, 62, and I saw that show, saw the Beatles and Ed Sullivan. But the thing that influenced me the most, more than music, was Walt Disney.
Really?
Yeah, because of the cartoons he had, and there was a song, "When you wish upon a star, it doesn't matter where you are." I learned how to play some of those classic melodies when I was a kid. So that was when they had incredible songwriters, Sammy Kahn, Julie Stein, Oppenheimer. All the major songwriters came from that Tin Pan Alley day. And so my parents had a big collection of classical music and didn't have too much black music. Both my parents, they're not racist, but they're from the South. Mm-hmm. So Muddy Waters was not on top of their listening list.
Not a lot of blues albums then.
There wasn't, but blues has affected us so about the vocals. I hated my voice for years. I couldn't sing that. Some of these metal guys are just so powerful. But it wasn't for me. One day I had a managerial person said, "You need to do that sexy thing. We don't have anyone like that." And that's how it started.
That sexy thing.
Yeah, that's what they called it. So got in a lot of trouble for that.
Do you remember the first moment where you might consider it your first big break, into the music scene?
Well, there were a couple of things. Yeah, another story. Right after playing in that glee club, there was a really famous camp for boys called Camp LaSalle, run by the Christian Brothers, a Catholic organization, take us to Mexico. And there was a Spanish-American guy, Ernie Gonzalez. He and his family watched over it. And at the time, Tequila was out to
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I played acoustic guitar with a guitar I bought for 50 cents, and Ernie played his, and I won a whole case of Orange Crush. It was a feeling of accomplishment. Of course, there were other things that happened. I'll tell you a story you may or may not have heard of. If everyone out there in Radio Land wants to Google the word Smack, S-M-A-C-K, 1968. And I was part of a four-piece band, which is considered the greatest garage band of all time. If you can find an original recording, they go for $30,000.
Wow.
And a few years ago, a company in Europe contacted me. They basically deal with psychedelia and that kind of stuff. And I was a bass player then. I didn't play guitar as well as the guitarist did. Wanted to, but he just knew what to do. So we had an LP of some Hendrix songs, some Cream songs, Kinks song, and Buffalo Springfield tune. And I went to Lawrence, Kansas, got a scholarship to go to college there. Early in the summer session, maybe 2,800 kids there. Normally, Lawrence, Kansas has a huge student thing of maybe 26,000 students going there. So for years, I never thought of this record. And a couple of years ago, a group from Denmark called me, "Are you Phil Brown?" The bass player from a band called Smack. And I said, "Oh, my God, how did you find me?" He says, "Well, we've been looking for you for a couple of years because we're going to put this record out. It's considered the garage band record of all time." So I swear to God, if you go to Google, they don't mention us by name, but they mention 4 kids for 17. And I was one of those kids. That was really the first time I knew something was going to happen.
That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money for a demo right there, ain't it?
Well, for vinyl, yeah, because they only made 2,000 of them. So for audiophile is a big thing. Guys have, $50,000 to $200,000 stereos. Mm-hmm. There's nothing like listening to a stereo that's just better than MP3s. The MP3s are never designed to be music. It's for military applications, but everyone's used to it.
When you
sort of clear it up.
Yeah, when you did start gaining notoriety, how did you handle, the newfound success? Was it the sex, drugs, and rock and roll lifestyle?
Well, I originally played guitar to meet girls. What a great way to play.
I think that's the number one reason anybody learns to play guitar.
Yeah, because there's really four things. Years later, I discovered this. One, you can't find the girl. Number two, when you find the girl, she's got a boyfriend. Number three, the girl you're with, you can't get rid of. God forbid. And number four, the luckiest thing is you're with someone that's crazy about you and you're crazy about them. So it was all about, yeah, there was sex, drugs, and rock and roll, but most of it was the rock and roll. I love the feeling of authenticity of knowing you could play a song like, I grew up loving the Yardbirds because Eric Clapton was in the band, Jeff Beck was in the band, Jimmy Page was in the band. I just loved English invasion interpretations of our blues tunes, and the Yardbirds were one of my favorite bands. And you had to be a guy, like a real male, to learn how to play some of that stuff. I'm a Man, Over, Under, Sideways Down, Heart Full of Soul, all those great songs. I met some of the writers of those songs and actually did a tour with a guy that helped write some of those. Graham Gouldman wrote For Your Love for the Yardbirds. He wrote Bus Stop for the Hollies, Carrie Ann for the Hollies. There she goes, just a walking down the street. Oh, yeah. There's some great songwriters. Yeah, so if you grew up with that, that was part of my heritage, my backbone. So handling it was this one thing. You know, in school, if you didn't find music, I was just kind of a dweeb. I just didn't know who I was. But music, I knew what to do. You can't lie if you play music. You're either playing a G chord or you ain't.
You talking about writing? You've done a lot of writing. You helped do one.
That was an accident too.
Yeah,
I always wrote songs. There was a band I absolutely loved. You might recall called Moby Grape. They were a San Francisco band. They were like the Byrds and like Buffalo Springfield, but in my opinion, infinitely better. And they had three singers, three guitar players, drummer and bass player. And I sort of planned that I could write songs like that. They had a guitar player that had incredible vibrato back in the 60s, which nobody had. I think the first time it came out was when Pacific Gas and Electric had an English guitar player named Kent Henry, who was really the guitarist who played on a lot of the Steppenwolf records. He had great vibrato, which you did not hear on recordings in America. You just didn't. The English guys really knew how to do that, mainly because they listened to all those great guitar players. Hubert Sumlin, played with Muddy Waters, and I grew up listening to a lot of that stuff. I hear a great blues song from that day, and I just identify so much with the idea of, it's a story about a good man that doesn't feel so good. I could relate to that. Even as a young person, I didn't have a lot of experience, but I knew what it was to hurt. That's a common denominator in great music.
Has someone ever performed a song you've wrote, and then you hear it and you're like, man, that's not what I intended at all?
I want to be respectful. All the people that did my songs, did justice to all of them. They're not the way I would do them, of course not, but they did them the way they did them, and I'm glad they did. There was probably more girls cut my songs than guys, because I'm not a good whiner. There was a famous song by Spooky Tooth, You Broke My Heart, So I Broke Your Jaw. I love that band because they had Gary Wright was one of their singers, and Mike Harrison was the other singer in the band, and they were just really tremendous. They had a great guitar player. They just had I just was a big fan of Spooky Tooth. Years later, I became friends with a writer named Larry Weiss. He wrote High Hill Silver Lining, Jeff Beck's first single after he left the Yardbirds, Bend Me, Spate Me Any Way You Want Me, Evil Woman. And the reason I mention this is because it was cut by Lou Rawls and Spooky Tooth and Canned Heat. And the biggest song he wrote was Like a Rhinestone Cowboy. He's a Jew from Jersey. He's a dear friend. He just knew what to do. He's a great songwriter.
You helped write Trouble Walking, too. That Fraley album come out in, I think, 89. That's an awesome jam.
Oh, God, yes.
That's an awesome jam, man. I was meaning to ask you about that. I was holding on to that to ask because I'm a big Kiss fan, and of course, being a big Kiss fan, I'm a big Fraley fan. So had all that Casablanca thing going on. And
so I'll tell you a true story. Here's a true story. I'm in Los Angeles, and it's a big single for Ace. That record has sold more records than any of the Kiss solo records combined. He was on some radio show, and they said, "Hey, how'd you come up with that title?" And I wrote that with a guy named Bill Ray. We just had fun. I had this dun da 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 dum da 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 dum dum. That was the main guitar riff, And I sort of wanted to make it like MC5, just raucous and so American, but it came out pretty good. Anyway, Ace was on. He was talking about playing tennis with one of his friends, how he totally beat him at the tennis game. He says, I can see, how'd you get the title? He says, well, I'm just trouble walking. And I remember calling up the radio station. I was just livid. It was in my first year of sobriety. It was in 1985. He says, my name is Phil Brown. I'm one of the writers. He says, oh, man, you're calling to talk to Ace? I said, no, I'm calling to tell you something. Ace, you didn't write that song. Bill Ray and I wrote that song. It had nothing to do with the title. And I hope it sells 1 million copies because we're going to get rich. So are you.
Is he a cool cat? Is Ace a cool cat, man?
Yeah, he's a cool cat. He's a great guy, man.
There's so much passion. There's so much passion in your performances, man. Was it always like that, or has your love for performing only increased over the years?
It's always been like that.
It's never waned.
I had to leave because of whatever. Not to worry. Here's something. I'm here at this session. I had to write a chart out for this very famous composer who writes film music. God, he's so good. He's written stuff he recognized. And so the chart I wrote, he wanted to write it himself after I did. So he scribbled through anything. And I'm of the opinion, when you really love something, it shows in your life. It really does. A number of my friends who are let's say they're in their 50s and 60s, because I'm in my 60s. This is the best it has ever been. I know how to play a little bit. I know more than I did when I was 18. I remember seeing a show in 60 Minutes that featured Pablo Casals, his cello player, one of the greatest cello players of all time. Yo-Yo Ma's the other great cello player. Anyway, he was giving an interview, and his assistant had married him. She was 33, he was 66. And Maury said, how is it when he doesn't practice? He says, oh, when he doesn't practice one day, I notice. And then he says, when he doesn't practice 2 days, his fans notice. And then he started to say something else, and he looked at her and went, when I don't practice the third day, I notice. So it is something that you just can't stop. Once it starts, you're there. And a number of my friends gave up their music careers to create families, and God bless them, they have. But almost all of them, to the person, developed big health problems until they went back to start playing. So many of them are now in weekend bands, and they have corporate bands, and they're just happier than they can ever be. Almost all of them told me, he says, my wife met me playing, and now that I've gone back, she will not get her hands off me. And I said, the power of sex, drugs, and rock and roll, right? He goes, well, it's the power of sex and rock and roll. The drug is feeling good about everything. So I totally relate. Yeah, I love that question. That's good.
Have you ever had a song you've written that maybe you were a little on the fence about, but it turned out to be a big success? And, and vice versa, a song you thought, just was it, but didn't pan out like you had hoped?
There were a couple that were like that. But because of the times, but over a period of time, those songs become etched in her. There was a single I wrote for KBC with Van Stevenson called It's Not You, It's Not Me. The original title was called Call Me Next Week. Mm-hmm. And it had sort of a punk, nouveau, suave kind of chorus. But the verse was like the Police. When the sun goes down on the Hollywood Hills, that's when the sharks move in. And it's the overkill. There's a certain glow in the marketplace that the neon signs fail to illustrate. And the chorus, it's not you, it's not me. None of this is real. It's not black, it's not white, but it's something you can feel. When you're flat on your back, oh, they'll get you every time. This is the town that brings you the line, you better call me next week, which is a story about what it was like to live in Los Angeles. I've had a couple of songs like that, but overall, I'm just happy that the producer and the artist heard it. Let's say that, Rob, you're the artist, and I would meet with your manager one time just to be introduced, and then I would never call the manager again. Even if he called me, hey, how's it going? I would hang with you, we'd get to be friends. I mean, real friends. And you'd probably play me the songs you were doing, and usually it takes about 10 years to really put a good set of songs together. Mm-hmm. I don't know why it does, but that's what the average is. And, of course, the contracts back in the 80s. You know, they wanted to do the 70s. They wanted you to do a record, 2 records a year and tour. What time do you have to write? So a lot of times the guy wasn't a prolific writer. And a lot of the artists that I had songs cut for, they had their time when they wrote, but they just couldn't keep up because of the pressure. And when you're writing all the time, my take on this is that if I was friends with you, maybe you'd call me a minute to midnight. And that happened 11 times out of 9. I would get a call from the publisher, the record company, and or the manager. And Phil, do you have anything for me? And I go, you know, I was waiting for you to ask, because we'd hang together for a couple of months. Mm-hmm. And songs that are lived in last longer. Do you remember that song by Boston that Tom just, their first hit? Help me with the title. Oh, God, every time I hear it.
Man, there's a bunch of Boston.
Let's pick another song. Steve Perry with Journey. You hear some of those early songs, and you could actually remember what you were doing in those days, how you were living your life. And those songs are lived in. They took time to develop. There's really 2 kinds of songwriting. There's the kind of songwriting that's administrative, where you're administrating your talent, and that's a great thing. But the word you used when you're passionate about it, and you just sort of let it happen, and the song writes itself. Yeah, and that seems to have been what's happened to me.
You look at the quality of the songs back then compared to now. I mean, do you think there's a big difference? I do. I think you know, songs like you're talking about were iconic and they live forever, whereas some of the stuff you hear nowadays on radio just kind of, I don't know how to describe it.
Yeah, you're right.
You won't hear them again in 6 months.
I'll give you a story. I'm good friends with George Brown from Kool and the Gang. I'm on their last record. I'm the only white player that's ever played with that band. I've known George for, God, almost 30 years. So he trusts me. When his mom died, he called me. When my younger brother got cancer and passed, I called him. We're Goombas. Mm-hmm. Like the 3 of us, we're just connecting on a lot of levels. We both agree with this, that many of the songs today have what we call the same iambic pentameter. You could take a country song, verse, and marry it to an alternative pre-chorus, go to a hip-hop chorus, and then go to a metal band for the next verse, come for another alternative death metal band. It's the same kind of lyric, same sounds. The themes are the same. Whereas when I was growing up, you could hear Jimi Hendrix, you could hear Jeff Beck, Rod Stewart, the Rolling Stones, the Beatles, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Crosby, Stills and Nash, Simon and Garfunkel, Moby Grape. I mean, they had the Animals. I'm mentioning some of my favorite bands. Mm-hmm. And I just, like you, I don't know that I'm smart, but my intelligence about feeling is really developed. Please tell me something different that doesn't have the same old formula. And I see that a lot, like you. I'm not complaining. I'm just making an observation. Many of the songwriters, I notice how the lyrics are clipped short, and they all have the same kind of vowel sounds. Mm-hmm. That's just my opinion. And I don't think it's bad.
Well, I feel the same way. I feel.
Oh, you do? Okay, good.
Yeah, I mean, a song, like you were talking about, you were saying the lyrics to a certain song a few minutes ago. You don't find lyrics like that in songs anymore.
It's rare if you do. I have a tune that you guys might know called La La Land on the Cruel Inventions record. There's a site called Airplay Direct. It's a big platform. Maybe 35,000 artists are on this. They released all 3 of my records, the Jimmy Project, Cruel Inventions, and my new record, Imagine This, at the same time. Today they were released. They've gone international. They've been in the top 10 of the 50 charts for blues and jazz and rock consistently over the last 4 weeks. I can't understand. Now, I'm pinching myself thinking about this because I've been, as a songwriter, you hope you get remembered for the message you leave. Mm-hmm. And I think all of us, you want to leave the world a little better place. You come in, you want your character to stand for something. And I'm not saying that other people don't have that, but it's important to me. And I'm thinking, I'm pretty happy the way things are working out. I've got a new agency that represents me. I just saw the banner ads for this. It's called airplaydirect.com. Mm-hmm. And the CEO of that company keeps playing that song, La La, and he says, I hear that song sometimes 20 times a day, Phil. It's just really hypnotic. And what I did on that particular record, I combined some hip-hop groove, ghetto groove, with rock and bluesy kind of energy. And it's morphed into what it is today. Those records, I think, in my opinion, I was at a friend of mine's house the other day for dinner. He said, I want to play some of your music while we eat. He was talking about what she was listening to, and I was just amazed that it sounded pretty good. I think I did okay. It's not the greatest, not the worst, but I was thinking, I got this little thing that sort of keeps me in line. I go, well, that's pretty good. There's still room for improvement. But at the end of the last song, I'm thinking, I got to hear La La Land. She goes, I really relate to what your record is saying about trying to make a good person that doesn't feel so good. I can hear that blues thing, but it's so entertaining, and of course it's sexy. And I'm divorced. And are you doing anything later? I'd say film at 11, but she's such a great friend of mine. You know, sometimes you get too close to people, that kind of activity kind of ruins your friendship. But she understood. Curtain Cook, I was glad to be there. But I learned a lot about listening. She goes, I can't find any music like this. I have to go back to the 60s to find it, and you seem to have brought that courage forth. And I thought, well, let's call it, had a little bit of luck and a little bit of providence thrown in the same sentence. So, yeah.
You know, we're almost out of time, but I'd like to let you plug, your social media or your website, where people can, listen to or, purchase your music. I know you mentioned Airplay Direct. Is there any other places like that people can go to?
You can go to iTunes and just put in Phil Brown, The Jimmy Project, or Phil Brown, Cruel Inventions, or Phil Brown, Imagine This. You can go to CD Baby, and you can download or get hard copy. You can send me an email if you want. Go to go to philbrownguitar.com, and you can order stuff through PayPal. What else is there? Airplay Direct, basically, or Reverb Nation.
Yeah, I was going to mention that. You're on Reverb, right?
Yep, on Reverb, and I have sort of a conglomeration of a lot of music there where you can buy stuff from there, too. It's reverbnation.com/Phil Brown Music. And the website is philbrownguitar.com. I think that'll cover it. I've got email there if somebody needs to reach out, and I love to talk to the fans, and they're the reason I'm still here, for the fans. I love you both. This has been, thank you, made my night. Now they're bugging at me to come and play, so I'm going to go play some guitar for a little while.
Cool, man. Have fun.
Rock it out, brother.
All right.
Peace.
God bless the two of you guys. Great idea.
Thank you.
The 25th Hour Radio Show.